There are moments in life that don't feel real while they're happening, moments so fragile, so quietly devastating that they settle into the soul and stay there forever. Barry Gibb had one of those moments the night Michael Jackson pulled him aside, away from the noise, away from the eyes, away from the version of Michael the world demanded he be. It wasn't planned, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't anything the public would ever hear about. But in a rare sliver of silence, Michael said something to Barry, something he had never told another soul. And the way he spoke it, almost like a confession he didn't want to carry anymore, left Barry standing there with a truth he didn't know how to hold. A truth about fear, about identity, about what happens when the whole world is watching, but no one truly sees you. Barry kept that moment hidden for years, locked inside him like a memory that burned too deeply to expose. And the question that haunts the story is simple. What did Michael tell him that night? And why did Barry never forget it? You're watching RetroWaves, where the untold stories of music finally come to light. If you're ready to hear the truth behind the moments the world never saw, let's continue. Barry and Michael didn't bond over chart success or global fame. They bonded over something quieter, something heavier. The strange, invisible loneliness of being adored by millions and understood by almost no one. Both men knew what it felt like to be placed on a pedestal so high that even their own emotions felt out of reach. They shared a respect that ran deeper than music. They shared pressure, responsibility, expectation. And in a life where every word becomes a headline, they shared the hunger for one place, just one, where honesty was allowed. That's why this moment mattered, because on that night, Barry wasn't talking to the king of pop. He wasn't talking to a phenomenon. He was talking to a man who had spent years suffocating beneath his own legend. And that's why the secret Michael whispered didn't just surprise Barry. It changed the way he saw him forever. Barry had seen famous people overwhelmed before, but there was something different about Michael that night. Something unguarded, something trembling just beneath the surface. His posture was gentle, as always, but his eyes held a strain Barry couldn't ignore. A look that said he was standing at the edge of something he wasn't sure he could escape. Michael spoke softly, cautiously, as if choosing the wrong word might shatter him. He didn't talk about concerts, records, or gossip. He spoke of pressure, pressure so constant he no longer felt the difference between admiration and expectation. Pressure so loud that silence felt foreign. He said the world had turned him into an image, a spectacle, a myth. But somewhere along the way, the real Michael, the boy who loved music for its joy, not its weight, began slipping out of focus. And then Michael said something that made Barry's breath hitch. People love me, but they don't see me. It wasn't self-pity. It wasn't dramatics. It was honesty, the kind that cuts quietly, slowly, painfully. Barry realized in that moment that Michael wasn't just tired. He was disappearing behind the very greatness the world praised him for. And Barry knew the conversation was drifting somewhere deeper, toward a truth Michael had never dared to say out loud. And the night was only beginning. As the tension eased from Michael's voice, something else surfaced. Regret. Not regret about fame or fortune or scrutiny, but regret about the pieces of himself he had sacrificed along the way. He told Barry that he had spent years trying to be perfect. Perfect on stage, perfect on camera, perfect in every moment the world insisted on watching. And in doing so, he had slowly stepped away from the things that once gave him life. He missed simple joys. He missed being spontaneous. He missed being allowed to be flawed. Michael said there were people he wished he had held closer, memories he wished he had stayed inside longer, moments he wished he hadn't rushed through just to get to the next demand. I kept choosing the world over myself, he whispered. I didn't know how not to. Barry felt that deeply, because he too had lived a life shaped by the expectations of millions. But hearing Michael admit this regret, this quiet sorrow, was like watching someone reveal a bruise they'd hidden for years. It wasn't about failure, it wasn't about guilt, it was about longing for a life he never fully got to live. Barry could tell the confession wasn't over. Something heavier was still coming, something Michael had never voiced to another human being, and Barry braced himself for it. There was a shift in Michael's voice, a tremble, a softness, the kind of vulnerability you only hear when someone has finally stopped pretending. For years, Michael had carried the weight of being a symbol, not a man, a legend, not a human being. And in that quiet room, the mask he wore so carefully, so religiously, finally cracked. Michael admitted that even at the height of his fame, even when the world chanted his name, he felt profoundly alone. Not the kind of alone that comes from being isolated, but the kind that sinks into the soul when you're surrounded by thousands, but recognized by none. He felt watched, analyzed, dissected. He felt like every move he made was a performance. He wondered whether anyone would still want him if he stopped giving pieces of himself away. "I don't know who I am backstage anymore," he whispered. Barry felt the ground shift under him. That sentence wasn't about confusion, it was about identity, unraveling in real time. It was the kind of confession a person only makes when they've held it in far too long. Michael wasn't losing himself because he wanted to. He was losing himself because the world demanded more of him than any one person could give. And Barry realized Michael wasn't asking for sympathy. He wasn't asking for help. He was preparing to reveal the fear that had hollowed him out quietly, privately, invisibly. A fear Barry would never forget. Then, in a breath barely louder than a sigh, Michael revealed the secret he had carried far too long. He told Barry he was scared, not of scandal, not of failure, not of critics or rumors, but of something far more devastating. He was scared of disappearing inside the life the world had created for him. He felt trapped between who he truly was and who the world insisted he be. Every attempt to rest was seen as weakness. Every attempt to step away was met with pressure. Every attempt to find himself was drowned out by the noise around him. "I feel like the real me is fading," he said, piece by piece. Those words pierced Barry like a blade of ice, because this wasn't a celebrity complaint. It was a human breaking open. It was someone admitting he no longer recognized the person he had become. Michael wasn't talking about career burnout. He was talking about identity disappearing in real time. And Barry understood instantly why Michael had never said this out loud. The world wanted the myth, not the man. And the man was exhausted. The secret wasn't grand. It wasn't scandalous. It wasn't designed for headlines. It was painful, personal, and heartbreakingly human. But Michael wasn't done. There was one more truth he needed Barry to hear. The room felt impossibly still as Michael's confession deepened. His eyes softened, and for the first time that night, Barry saw not fear, but surrender, a kind of tired acceptance that comes when someone has carried a burden far too heavy for far too long. Michael said that despite everything, despite the pressure, the loneliness, the expectations, music remained the one place he still felt alive, not as an icon, but as himself, creating with Barry, blending harmonies, singing without judgment. That was the closest he came to remembering who he truly was. And then he placed a hand on Barry's arm, a rare gesture for someone so guarded, and spoke the line that would echo through Barry's mind for decades. "Don't let the world take the last piece of you." Barry didn't understand the full weight of it then, but much later, when the world dimmed, when the news broke, when silence fell over everything Michael was, Barry finally realized. Michael wasn't giving advice. He was confessing the thing he feared most, the thing he felt happening to him more each year, the thing he knew he couldn't stop. It was the closest Michael ever came to saying, "I'm losing myself." And Barry carried that truth quietly, respectfully, painfully, because once you hear someone's deepest fear, you never forget it. Years later, when Barry finally spoke publicly about his friendship with Michael, he didn't reveal every detail of that night. Some truths were too sacred, some wounds too personal, some moments not meant for the world's eyes. But he did reveal the heart of the secret, the part that shaped him in ways he couldn't explain. Barry said that Michael had confessed he was terrified of losing the parts of himself that made him human. The laughter, the spontaneity, the quiet, the softness, the ability to breathe without the world demanding something from him. He told me he felt like he was disappearing, Barry admitted, not physically, emotionally, spiritually. He felt the world saw the legend, but the man behind it was fading. This was the truth Michael carried. This was the secret he entrusted to Barry. Not a scandal, not a revelation, but a fear so raw, so deeply buried that he shared it only once. Michael Jackson, the most celebrated artist on the planet, felt he was losing himself to the very force that made him iconic. And Barry understood it in a way few could, because he too had felt the erosion of identity under the weight of fame. But Michael's version was different. Michael's version was tragic. And it was this truth, this whispered confession in a quiet room, that Barry would never, ever forget. Barry carried Michael's secret like a fragile piece of glass, never flaunting it, never exploiting it, simply holding it with the respect it deserved. Because he knew the world had never truly seen Michael. They saw brilliance, yes. They saw perfection, yes. But they never saw the boy who longed for peace, the man who longed for selfhood, the soul who feared he was fading. Michael's confession became a reminder for Barry to protect what mattered most: his identity, his family, the small truths no spotlight could touch. And even now, when Barry speaks of Michael, there is a softness in his voice, a quiet ache, a memory that still flickers like a candle in a dark room. Because once, in a rare moment of honesty, Michael Jackson revealed the fear he couldn't live with alone. And Barry Gibb never forgot the final line he shared: "Don't let the world take the last piece of you.